The rifle cracked through the crisp Maine morning like a bone snapping, and Finn dropped to one knee in the underbrush, his breath coming in sharp gasps that fogged the air. I froze behind him, my own gun heavy in my hands, heart pounding not from the near miss of the buck we'd been tracking but from the way his shoulders shook, like he was holding back a storm. "Dad," he whispered, voice cracking like dry leaves underfoot. "What if I'm not who you think I am?" That was the moment the woods went silent, the kind of silence that swallows you whole, and I knew nothing would ever be the same. We'd come up to the old cabin in Ridge Valley for our annual hunting trip, same as every fall since I adopted him a decade ago. A ritual carved out of grief and grit to keep us tethered after Sarah left us for the cancer that ate her from the inside. Finn was 12 then, all gangly limbs and wide green eyes, a foster kid with a file thicker than my thumb, shipped from some overcrowded group home in Portland because no one else wanted the quiet boy who barely spoke. I was 35, a lobster fisherman turned carpenter after the boats got too rough on my knees, living in a salt-worn house on the edge of Haven Point where the Atlantic crashed like it had a grudge. Sarah and I had tried for years to fill that empty room upstairs, but biology laughed in our faces, so when the agency called about Finn, abandoned by a mother hooked on pills, father long gone, we said yes without a second thought. He arrived with a duffel bag and a stare that could pierce steel, and from day one, he called me Dad like it was the only word he trusted. Those early years were a slow thaw. I'd wake before dawn, brew coffee black as the bay, and find him already at the kitchen table, sketching whales in a notebook he'd salvaged from the trash. "What's this one?" I'd ask, ruffling his hair, and he'd mumble something about how they sang to each other across oceans no one else could hear. Sarah would laugh, her laugh like wind chimes in summer, and pull him into hugs that smelled of lavender soap. We took him fishing off the docks, taught him to shuck oysters with a pocket knife, watched him bloom like a weed pushing through cracked pavement. He was ours, fierce and fragile, and when Sarah faded, her body a shadow on the hospice bed, her hand limp in mine as she whispered, "Love him fierce, Wyatt." I buried her under the pines in Maple Creek Cemetery and swore I'd do just that. Finn grew into a young man who turned heads without trying, tall and lean like a sapling, with that mop of chestnut hair that fell over his forehead no matter how many times he pushed it back, and eyes the color of sea glass after a storm. At 18 now, he was a senior at Haven Point High, captain of the soccer team, the kid who fixed the neighbors' trucks for free and volunteered at the animal shelter on weekends, bottle-feeding orphaned fawns with a gentleness that made my chest ache. But there were shadows. Late nights when I'd hear him pacing the creaky floorboards upstairs, or the way he'd flinch at loud voices in the diner downtown, like echoes from a life he wouldn't share. I'd catch him staring out at the horizon from the porch, journal clutched to his chest, and wonder what ghosts he was chasing. This trip was supposed to be simple. 3 days in the cabin my grandfather built back when Ridge Valley was just a scattering of loggers' shacks, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and gun oil. We'd pack the truck with venison jerky, a cooler of IPAs, and the old Remingtons passed down like heirlooms. No cell service up here, no distractions. Just us, the woods, and the rhythm of pursuit. Finn had been quieter than usual on the drive up from Haven Point, 2 hours of winding roads flanked by fiery maples, the radio humming low with Springsteen tracks Sarah loved. "You good, kid?" I'd asked, glancing over as he fiddled with the zipper on his hoodie. "Yeah, Dad, just thinking." His voice was soft, almost lost in the engine's rumble, and he turned to the window, tracing fog patterns with his finger. I let it go, chalked it up to senior year stress. College apps looming like storm clouds, the pressure to pick a path when all he ever talked about was marine biology, dreams of studying whales off the California coast. But as we unloaded at the cabin, stacking firewood under the sagging porch, I noticed the way his hands trembled stacking the cans, the faint bruise blooming under his left eye like a secret he'd painted over with concealer. That first evening, we grilled burgers over the fire pit, sparks dancing up into the twilight like fireflies on steroids. Finn laughed at my story about the time I hooked a seal instead of a cod, his grin wide and boyish, but it faded quick when I asked about school. "Coach riding you hard?" I probed, flipping the patties with a spatula scarred from years of use. He shrugged, poking at the coals with a stick. "Nah, just people being people." There was a weight to it, a door half slammed, and I didn't push. Instead, we cracked open beers. His first legal one, a milestone we toasted with clinking bottles, the foam spilling over like unspoken toasts to survival. As the stars wheeled out overhead, brighter than city lights could ever steal, he leaned back on the log bench, head tilted skyward. You ever feel like you're pretending, Dad? Like the whole world's a stage and you're just waiting for your line? I sipped my drink, the bitterness grounding me. Every damn day after your mom. But pretending's what keeps the wolves at bay. He nodded, but his eyes stayed fixed on the void, and I wondered if he heard the echo of my own hollow words. Dawn broke cold the next day, frost glazing the truck's windshield like sugar. We geared up in silence. Camouflage jackets zipped over thermals, boots laced tight against the chill, and slipped into the woods like shadows. Ridge Valley's forest was ancient, hemlocks towering like sentinels, the ground a carpet of needles that muffled our steps. Finn moved ahead, sure-footed as a deer, his breath steady while mine rasped from too many smokes in my youth. We'd spotted tracks earlier, fresh enough to promise meat for winter stew, and the thrill of the chase pulled us deeper, away from the cabin's creaks and the world's noise. That's when it happened. The buck burst from the thicket, antlers like branched lightning, and Finn fired first. Too quick, the shot wild. It wheeled toward us, eyes wild with panic, and in that split second, he dropped, clutching his knee as if the recoil had jarred something loose inside. I lunged forward, grabbing his arm, the rifle forgotten in the ferns. Finn? What the hell? His face crumpled. Not from pain but something deeper, rawer. Tears tracked clean paths through the dirt on his cheeks, and he looked up at me with those sea-glass eyes, fractured now. Dad, he said, the word a plea. What if I'm not who you think I am? The words hung there, heavier than the gunpowder haze, and the buck vanished into the mist, leaving us alone with the truth he'd been carrying like a stone in his chest. I sank down beside him, the damp earth soaking through my pants, my mind reeling. Not who I think. What did that even mean? The boy I'd raised, the one who'd bandaged my split knuckles after a bar fight, who'd held my hand at Sarah's grave when my knees buckled. But as he buried his face in his hands, sobs racking his frame, I saw it. The flinch not from the shot, but from a lifetime of hiding. And in that moment, with the woods holding its breath, I realized the hunt I'd been on all along wasn't for game, but for the son I thought I knew. We sat there until the sun climbed higher, burning off the fog, his breathing evening out against my shoulder where I'd pulled him close without thinking. No words at first, just the rhythm of his grief syncing with the distant call of a loon on the lake. When he finally lifted his head, his voice was a thread. I'm gay, Dad. Have been for years. And I can't pretend anymore. The confession landed like a gut punch, not because it shocked me. Lord, I'd suspected, pieced it together from the posters of rugged surfers on his wall, the way he'd blush at certain actors in our movie nights, but because of the fear laced through it, sharp as barbed wire. Gay. In Haven Point, where the church steeple loomed over Friday night lights and folks still whispered about the that-way couple who'd fled town a decade back. My boy, my fierce, fragile Finn, carrying this alone while I fished and hammered nails, blind to the war inside him. I started, throat thick, searching for the right words in a vocabulary worn thin by loss. Kid, you think that changes a damn thing? But it did, already shifted the ground under us like an earthquake's aftershock. He searched my face, hope and terror warring in his eyes, and I pulled him tighter, the scent of pine and sweat mingling with the salt of his tears. You're my son, always will be. Whoever you love, that's your truth. And I'll stand with you, come hell or high water. He nodded, a small sob escaping, but relief flickered there, tentative as the first green shoot after frost. We gathered the guns, abandoned the track, and hiked back to the cabin in a silence that felt sacred now, weighted with possibility. Lunch was canned chili heated over the stove, eaten at the scarred oak table where grandfather had carved his initials. Finn picked at his bowl, stealing glances at me like I might vanish if he looked away too long. You mean it? No lectures, no. Disappointment. I set my spoon down, met his gaze steady. Disappointment? Finn, raising you's been the best damn thing I ever did. Your mom's up there grinning, I bet, wishing she'd stuck around for this. He smiled then, faint but real, and for the first time in years, the cabin felt less like a refuge from grief and more like a beginning. Afternoon brought rain, a steady patter on the tin roof that turned the world to silver sheets. We played cards by the fire, gin rummy, his favorite, losing track of time as stories spilled out. He told me about the first crush, a boy named Tyler from summer camp in Portland, all freckles and easy laughs. The kiss stolen behind the boathouse that tasted like stolen freedom. Felt like flying dead. But then he ghosted, said his folks would kill him. The hurt in his voice twisted something in me, a father's rage at the world's cruelties. I shared too, halting at first, about the confusion in my own youth, the mill worker back in my 20s who'd made my pulse race during late shifts, a secret I'd buried under Sarah's love and the life we built. Thought it made me broken, I admitted, poking the logs till embers flared. But love's not a straight line, kid. It's a damn ocean. Wild, deep, pulls you where it will. His eyes widened, a bridge forming between us. You? Not like that now. But yeah, makes me get it. Why this world's so hard on folks like us. The rain eased to drizzle, and we stepped out onto the porch, mugs of coffee steaming in our hands. The forest exhaled, mist rising from the ferns, and Finn leaned against the rail, shoulders relaxing for the first time. College, he said softly. Maybe San Francisco, somewhere I can just be. I nodded, pride swelling fierce. Wherever, Finn. But Maine's always home if you need it. That night, sleep came easier, the weight lifted just enough to breathe. The second day dawned clearer, the sky a bruised blue over Ridge Valley, and we ventured out again. Not for hunt, but for hike, boots crunching over moss-slick rocks along the trail to Blackbird Falls. Finn walked taller, a lightness in his step that made him seem younger, unburdened, like the boy who'd raced me to the lighthouse on his 10th birthday. We talked in fits and starts, the conversation meandering like the stream beside us. His dreams of oceanography, the whales he'd read about that migrated thousands of miles for love. My tales of Sarah's wild streak, how she dragged me dancing in dive bars till dawn, her hips swaying to blues that still echoed in my bones. But under the ease lurked edges. At the falls, where water thundered over granite into a foaming pool, he skipped stones with a ferocity that belied his calm. What about you, Dad? After Mom? Anyone? The question caught me off guard, the pebble he flung slicing the surface like a knife. I perched on a boulder, the spray misting my face. Nah, too set in my ways. The shop keeps me busy. Those custom cabinets for the Bedfords ain't building themselves. It was half-truth. The other half was fear, the hollow after Sarah that no one could fill without shattering what little I'd patched together. But saying it aloud, with him watching so intently, stirred something dormant. A curiosity, perhaps, about paths not taken. He nodded, but his expression tightened, like he'd swallowed a hook. Hunter asked me out last week. Soccer team guy. Said he'd been waiting to say it since freshman year. My gut clenched. Not jealousy, but a visceral protectiveness, imagining the small-town whispers that could follow. Haven Point wasn't Portland. It was flannel and fishing nets, where difference was tolerated in tourists but I'd warily in kin. And, I prompted, keeping my voice even, though my knuckles whitened on the rock. I said yes, then no. Freaked out. He hurled another stone, this one sinking without ripple. What if it's a joke? Or what if it's real, and I screw it up? The vulnerability hit me square, a mirror to my own buried doubts. I stood, clapping a hand on his shoulder, feeling the lean muscle earned from endless practices. Real scary as hell, Finn, but faking it? That's death by inches. If he's worth it, you'll figure the rest. He leaned into the touch just a fraction, and we stayed there till the sun arced high, the roar of the falls drowning out the what-ifs. Back at the cabin, we prepped for the evening. Venison from last year's haul, marinated in whiskey and herbs, sizzling on the cast-iron skillet. Over dinner, the talk turned deeper, confessions uncoiling like smoke from the chimney. He spoke of the isolation, the crushes on straight friends that twisted like knots in his gut, the online forums where he'd found brothers in anonymity, but never the courage to claim it face to face. Felt like I was betraying you, he admitted. Fork paused midair. The family man who gave up everything. Didn't want to be. More trouble. Trouble? I barked a laugh, bitter-edged. Boy, you're the only good I've got left. But his words unearthed my own guilts. The late nights I'd spent nursing beers alone, staring at faded photos, wondering if I'd failed him by not seeing sooner. Sarah had always said I was blind to the soft parts of the world, too busy wrestling storms to notice the poetry in the waves. As night fell, we built the fire high, flames licking the stars. Finn pulled out his journal, pages filled with sketches. Whales breaching, abstract swirls of blue and gray that captured tempests of feeling. "This one's you," he said, flipping to a drawing of a lone figure on a cliff, arms outstretched to the sea. I traced the lines with a calloused finger, throat tight, strong but adrift. We talked till the embers glowed low, about identity's sharp edges, how mine had been forged in loss, his in secrecy. When he finally headed to the loft, I lingered by the hearth, the drawing tucked in my pocket like a talisman. Sleep evaded me, thoughts churning. Pride in his bravery, terror for his heart in a world that could bruise it so easy. Morning of the third day brought frost again, but we rose with purpose. The real hunt called not for meat, but clarity. We packed light, thermoses of coffee sloshing as we trekked to the ridge overlook, a sheer drop where the valley sprawled like a quilt of gold and green. Finn led, his stride confident now, pausing to point out tracks. Fox prints weaving through bracken, a doe's delicate imprints by the stream. "See how she moves light?" he said, crouching. "Like she's carrying secrets, but not weighed down." I grunted agreement, but my mind wandered to Hunter, the name a burr under my skin. At the overlook, wind whipping our jackets, we glassed the horizon with binoculars. Empty woods, save for a hawk wheeling lazy circles. "Ever think about bringing someone home?" Finn asked, lowering the lenses, his cheeks flushed from cold or something warmer. The question ambushed me, stirring dust over old fires. Maybe, someday. But truth was, the mill worker's ghost lingered, a what-if that had shaped my silences. And now, with Finn's truth laid bare, it felt like permission, to question, to yearn. He turned, eyes searching. "You deserve it, Dad. More than just surviving." The words cracked me open, a fissure letting light in. We sat then, backs to a stump, sharing the last of the jerky, the valley humming below. He opened up about the bruise. Not from soccer, but a shove in the locker room. A slur hissed after someone spied him lingering too long on a teammate's form. "Laughed it off," he said, voice steady but eyes distant. But it stuck. Rage boiled low in me, a father's fury at shadows that dared touch his light. "Who?" I growled, but he shook his head. "Doesn't matter. Telling you does." And in that, the power shifted from hiding to claiming, a quiet revolution. The hike back was slower, laden with the trip's end. At the cabin, we cleaned rifles by rote, oil rags whispering over steel, the ritual grounding us. "Thanks," Finn murmured as dusk crept in, stacking the gear, "for not making it weird. Wouldn't dream of it." But inside, it was all weird and wonderful, a reframing of the boy, no, the man before me. Dinner was simple. Beans and cornbread, eaten with stories of future hunts, ones where he might bring Hunter, or whoever made his heart sing. Laughter came easier, a bridge over the chasm we'd crossed. That night, rain returned, drumming a lullaby. I lay awake, listening to his even breaths from the loft, the drawing from his journal now pinned above my bed back home. The sentence he'd uttered days ago echoed, not as fracture but revelation. He wasn't just my son. He was his own, vast as the ocean he chased. And in seeing him fully, I glimpsed myself, adrift no more, ready to sail. As the storm raged, I whispered to the dark, "Love you, kid," and meant it wider than before. The drive home from Ridge Valley unfolded under a sky heavy with unshed rain, the truck's wipers slapping rhythm like a metronome to our newfound quiet. Finn rode shotgun, playlist shuffling indie folk that Sarah would have hummed along to, his fingers drumming the dash with a rhythm that spoke of release. Haven Point welcomed us with its familiar salt tang, the bay glittering under sodium lamps as we rolled into the driveway, porch light flickering like a beacon. Unloading was quick, gear tossed in the shed, coolers emptied. But the air between us hummed, charged with the unspoken pact forged in the woods. School week blurred by in a haze of routine. Me at the workshop in town, sanding cherrywood panels for a sea captain's desk, sawdust clinging to my flannel like second skin. Finn vanishing into practices, emerging mud-streaked and grinning. The bruise faded to yellow ghost. But evenings shifted, dinners stretched longer. Plates pushed aside for talks that dove deeper, plumbing the currents of his world. He showed me texts from Hunter, tentative pings that lit his phone like fireflies. Missed that goal today. You around Saturday? Finn's replies careful, testing waters, and I'd nod approval over coffee, masking the knot in my chest at how fast he was growing beyond my reach. Then came the betrayal, sharp as a slipped blade. It hit on a Thursday, fog rolling thick off the Atlantic, muting the world to graze. I was in the kitchen, stirring clam chowder. Sarah's recipe, potatoes bobbing like buoys. When Finn burst through the door, face ashen, jacket askew. Dad, he choked, slamming his backpack down. Hunter, he told everyone. The spoon clattered into the pot, broth sloshing. Told what? But I knew, the pieces slotting grim. The outing, the whispers I'd ignored at the feed store that morning. Folks averting eyes, murmurs dying as I entered. About me. Said it was a dare, that I was the joke. His voice broke, fists clenched white-knuckled on the counter. Coach pulled me aside after practice. Said to keep it clean or sit the playoffs. And the texts, they're blowing up. Slurs, Dad. Laughing emojis with knives. Rage ignited, hot and immediate visions of confronting the boy. His smug face I'd glimpsed at games. Cocky grin, Letterman jacket slung casual. But Finn's eyes, red-rimmed and pleading, doused it. Don't, he whispered, reading my intent. Please, it'll make it worse. I pulled him into a hug, his frame rigid at first, then melting sobs muffled against my shoulder. That boy's a coward, I growled into his hair. And they all are, for listening. But inside, guilt gnawed. Had my small-town roots blinded me to the vipers nesting here? We'd built this life on resilience. But what good was grit against a town's turning tide? That night, we fortified. Chowder cooling untouched, we mapped a plan over the scarred table. Talked to the principal come morning. Document the messages. Lean on Ms. Ellis at the shelter, who'd always had a soft spot for Finn and a lawyer brother in Augusta. He nodded through tears, but doubt shadowed his features. What if I just leave, drop out, head west early? No. Firm, unyielding. You fight for your place, kid. Or you take it when they won't give it. Words from my own battles, union strikes at the docks, standing against bosses who saw men as expendable. But seeing the cost etched on him, it tasted bitter. Friday brought confrontation. The high school a brick fortress under drizzling skies. Principal Hargrove, all jowls and false sympathy, ushered us into his office smelling of stale coffee and regret. Wyatt, Finn, troubling business. He skimmed the printouts I'd shoved across his desk, screenshots of venom. Fag alert, stay away from my sister. Memes twisting Finn's face onto rainbows aflame. Hunter sat across, flanked by parents in pressed khakis, his eyes downcast, feigning remorse under his father's bluster. Boys young, Mr. Harlan, ironically same surname, no relation, boomed. Hormones, no harm meant. No harm. I leaned forward, voice low thunder. You call this no harm? Hargrove mediated, suspensions doled light as feathers. 3 days for Hunter, sensitivity training that felt like slapping a band-aid on a severed limb. Finn sat silent, jaw set, but I saw the fracture. The trust shattered, not just in a boy, but in the fragile safety of home. Driving back, he stared out at the blurred pines. It hurts less than I thought. But why does it still hurt at all? Because you're human, Finn, and brave. That's the blade's edge. We stopped at the pier, waves crashing indifferent, and hurled pebbles into the foam, each splash a release. This passes, I promised. Towns like this, they churn slow, but tides turn. Weekend healed in fragments. Saturday, we drove to Portland. City lights a bomb against Haven Point's gloom. Bookstores with rainbow flags fluttering defiant. Cafes where couples like him held hands unremarked. He bought a whale pendant, silver tail curling, strung it on leather. For the migrations, he said, clasping it round his neck. Dinner at a dim bistro, lobster rolls dripping butter, and for hours we people watched. A man in his 40s, salt hair like mine, laughing with a partner whose hand rested easy on his knee. Finn's gaze lingered, hopeful. See? Worlds out there. Back home, the house felt besieged. Missed calls from concerned neighbors, voicemails laced with scripture and suspicion. I deleted them, but Finn heard one slip through. Old Mrs. Whitaker, voice quavering, "Wyatt, pray for that boy. Devil's work." He laughed, hollow. "Even you now in their eyes. Screw their eyes." But the isolation crept, a cold draft through cracks. Sunday, church skipped. First time in years. I took him to the shelter instead, where orphan litters awaited. He bottle-fed a runt kitten, its mews fierce, and whispered, "We're fighters, huh?" Miss Ellis hugged him fierce, slipped him her brother's card. "Your family here, Finn. All of you." That evening, storm clouds gathered, mirroring the one inside. We grilled salmon on the back deck, rain threatening, when my phone buzzed. A text from Jake, the mill worker from decades back, now a widower in Bangor. "Heard about the kid. Coffee? Old friends catch up." Heart stuttered. Jake's name a relic I dusted off in the cabin's confessions. Finn noticed, eyebrow arched. "Who?" "Ghost," I said, pocketing it, but the pull was there. A thread tugged after years untangled. As thunder rumbled distant, Finn set his plate down. "Go for it, Dad. Life's not just surviving." His words, echo of the ridge, cracked the dam. Betrayal's sting from Hunter from the town. Paled against this, permission to live extended like an olive branch. I texted back yes, and as rain began to fall, we dashed inside laughing, soaked and alive. The hurt lingered, but in its wake, growth. Roots delving deeper, branches reaching for light unashamed. Weeks bled into autumn's blaze, Haven Point's maples aflame as if the town itself burned with unspoken fevers. The scandal simmered low, whispers in aisles at the market, sidelong glances at the gas station. But Finn wore his pendant like armor, head high through hallways that once confined him. Soccer season raged. He scored the winning goal against Brunswick. The crowd's roar split between cheers and uneasy silences. But coach clapped his back postgame. Gruff, good hustle. Harlan, a quiet victory. Hunter transferred schools mid-semester. His family's Ford vanishing south, leaving echoes but no closure. Finn didn't ask after him, but I saw the scar in quiet moments. Journal pages filled with jagged waves crashing against cliffs. My own currents stirred. Coffee with Jake turned to lunches, then drives along the coast. His truck a time machine to younger selves, broad-shouldered and uncertain. Jake was changed. Lines around warm brown eyes from raising 2 girls alone after his wife's car wreck. Hands still calloused from lumber yards turned consulting gigs. We talked easy at first. Kids, weather, the mill's ghosts, then deeper admissions slipping like rain through pines. "Never shook you, Wyatt," he confessed over clam platters in Rockland, voice low under the diner's hum. That summer, thought it was one-sided. It wasn't, and owning it aloud felt like shedding rusted chains. Kisses came tentative. In his kitchen after a goodbye that lingered, salt of his skin mingling with memory. Guilt nipped, Sarah's ghost benevolent, but real. But Finn's knowing smile over breakfast quelled it. "Told you," he said, smirking over cereal. Tides turn. Yet conflict brewed, insidious as tide pools hiding crabs. Thanksgiving loomed, family scattered but traditions ironclad. Turkey in the oven, table set for ghosts and the living. I invited Jake, casual as fog, but Finn's face tightened, pendant twisting in his fingers. What if they find out? Aunt Clara's already side-eyeing the town talk. Aunt Clara, Sarah's sister, visiting from Augusta with her husband and their pack of grandkids. Arrived whirlwinds of hugs and pies, her perfume cloying as judgment. Dinner crackled with surface chatter. Jobs, weather, the kids' report cards. But undercurrents pulled, Clara's gaze lingering on Finn's untouched yams. Her any girl's special nephew? Laced with probe. He flushed, fork scraping plate. "Not really, Aunt. Busy with apps." She hummed, unconvinced, then turned to me. "Wyatt, you hear about the Millers? Their boy, same issue. Prayed it away, joined the military. Straightened right up." The room stilled, silverware pausing midair, Jake's jaw clenching beside me. I set my napkin down, deliberate. "Clara, Finn's perfect as is, and prayers fine for souls at peace, but forcing it? That's cruelty dressed as kindness." Her eyes widened, fork hovering, as Uncle Ray cleared his throat awkward. "Wyatt," she started, but Finn cut in, voice steady as steel. "It's okay, Dad. Aunt Clara, I'm gay. Have been. And it's not a phase or a sin. It's me. If that's too much for Turkey." Doors open. The table froze, kids gaping wide-eyed. Jake's hand finding mine under the cloth. Warm anchor. Clara sputtered, color high, but tears welled shock. Not hate, perhaps. "Oh, honey," she whispered finally, reaching across. "I didn't know." The air thawed slow, apologies mumbled over pie, the grandkids chattering oblivious. But damage lingered. Clara left early next morning, hugs stiff for Finn. Her "will pray for clarity," a parting barb wrapped in silk. Finn retreated to his room, door clicked soft, and I found him later curled on the bed, journal open to a sketch of breaking waves. "Sorry," he muttered. "Ruined it." "No." I sat beside, arm around his shoulders. "You owned it. That's power." Jake lingered in the hall, giving space, but his presence steadied us both. A new constellation forming. Winter crept in on nor'easters, snow blanketing Haven Point in hush. Finn's acceptance letter arrived from Monterey, UC's marine program gleaming like promise, and we celebrated with lobster bake on the beach, Jake joining, fire roaring against the gale. Laughter rang freer, stories weaving us tighter. Finn's whale facts, Jake's tales of his girl's antics, my dry quips earning eye rolls. But intimacy bloomed private. Jake's hand in mine during drives, nights tangled in his Bangor sheets, bodies mapping forgiveness for years lost. Climax crashed mid-January, a Friday night game under floodlights, frost-biting air. Finn captained, Haven Point versus rivals from Ellsworth, the field a mud-churned battlefield. He played fierce, weaving defenders, but midway, a tackle landed dirty. Ellsworth's linebacker, burly with sneer, slamming him down hard, knee to ribs. Whistle blew, but not before the slur. "Fairy fumble," hissed loud enough for stands to titter. Finn rose slow, pain etching his face, but fired back. "Better than your aim, asshole." Crowd split, boos, cheers, my yell lost in roar. Jake gripped my arm, knuckles white. "Easy," he murmured, but I was already moving, boots slipping on bleachers. Halftime. In the locker room shadows, coach confronted. Not the hit, but Finn's retort. "Keep it professional, Harlan. We don't need more headlines." Finn's eyes blazed. "Professional?" That was assault, coach. "Because I'm gay." The man deflated, mumbling procedure, but Finn stormed out, jersey muddied, finding me in the lot. "I'm done," he declared, breath fogging. "Quit the team. All of it." Heart sank, but pride surged. "Your call, kid." We drove home silent, Jake following, the truck cab thick with unspoken fury. Inside, over cocoa steaming, it poured, the exhaustion of performing, the toll of vigilance. "Wanna be free, Dad. Not fighting every inch." Jake listened, then spoke soft. "Freedom's not running. It's choosing your battles. But if you need to go." His hand on Finn's shoulder sealed it, family earned. That night, as snow swirled, we three sat by the fire, maps spread for Monterey visits. Betrayal's layers peeled, town, team, kin, but beneath, resilience. Finn sketched a new page. 3 figures on a cliff, arms linked, sea vast before. "Us," he said, "against the tide." And in that image, the change crystallized, not just how I saw him, but us whole. Spring unfurled reluctant in Maine, crocuses pushing through snowmelt like defiant flags, mirroring the thaw in our fractured world. Finn's decision to quit soccer rippled. Headlines in the local rags spun it neutral. Harlan steps away for academics. But locker room loyalties fractured. A few teammates texting solidarity, others ghosts. He poured energy into the shelter, leading a fundraiser that hauled in crates of supplies. His smile genuine amid the chaos of yipping pups. College prep consumed evenings. Essays on identity and oceans. His voice steady in recordings, weaving personal storms into scholarly calm. "This is me," he'd say, hitting send, and I'd nod from the doorway, chest tight with a father's alchemy, grief to gold. Jake wove deeper into the weave, weekends blurring boundaries. Hikes in Acadia where we'd lose the trail and find laughter instead. His daughters? Lila, 12 and sharp-tongued. Sophie, 10 with braids like ropes, visiting for pancakes that devolved into flower fights. They adored Finn, calling him cool bro, oblivious to undercurrents, and he bloomed under it, teaching them knot tying with rope from the shed, stories of Selkies whispered at bedtime. "You're good with them," Jake murmured one night, post-story, as the girls slumbered and Finn sketched by lamplight. I watched from the kitchen, beer in hand, the domestic hum foreign yet fitting, like a puzzle piece long missing. But romance's bloom carried thorns. Aunt Clara's silence stretched, her occasional cards to the girls stiff with platitudes. No mention of Finn. Then, mid-April, the call came, her voice tremulous over the line. "Wyatt, I saw a counselor. About what I said. It was fear, not faith. Can we talk?" Finn overheard, hovering in the hall. His "let her come" a grace I hadn't earned. Reconciliation brewed over tea in our living room. Clara perched prim on the sagging couch, hands knotted like driftwood. "I was wrong," she started, eyes on Finn. "Raised in a house where difference was devil. But Sarah, she'd want better." He nodded, tentative, sharing snippets of his world. The pendant's tale, Monterey's rainbows, and she listened, tears carving channels. "Proud of you, nephew," she whispered, hug awkward but real. Uncle Ray followed suit, gruff apologies over lobster rolls next visit, the grandkids bridging gaps with sticky fingers and endless questions. Yet deeper conflict simmered in me, a betrayal self-inflicted. May brought Jake's proposal. Not rings, but roots. Move in? Bangor's got space and the girls. His eyes held hope, vulnerable as exposed tide pools. I wanted it, mornings tangled, evenings shared, but Haven Point anchored, the house Sarah's echo, Finn's launchpad. Need time, I hedged, and saw the flicker of doubt, old wounds reopening. Finn sensed it, confronting over back porch beers as gulls wheeled overhead. "Don't stay for me, Dad. That's not freedom." His words echoed his own flight, the sentence from the woods reversed. "Jake's good. You deserve the ocean, too." Tears pricked, unmanly in the salt breeze. "What if I lose you both? Betrayal's ghost, hunters, the towns, whispered I'd ruin all." "You won't. Love doesn't subtract." He clinked bottles, grinned sly. "Besides, Monterey's only a flight away." Graduation swelled the high school gym, caps like blackbirds against rafters, Finn striding stage to cheers that drowned detractors. I sat with Jake, his hand warm in mine, Lila and Sophie waving signs scrawled, "Go Finn!" Diplomas clutched. He found us in the throng, hug fierce. "We did it," he breathed, and in that we, the family solidified, not blood but chosen. Summer solstice marked pivot. Finn's going away barbecue, backyard strung with lights, shelter friends mingling with Jake's crew, Aunt Clara manning the grill with surprising flair. Laughter crested waves of ribs and slaw, toasts to whales and new horizons. As dusk painted the bay violet, Finn pulled me aside, journal in hand, the cliff sketch now colored, figures vibrant against cerulean. "For you," he said, "remember we're migrants, always finding home." Jake and I danced then, slow under stars, his cheek to mine, the girls giggling from the porch. No grand gestures, just sway, promise enough. Finn left in August, U-Haul groaning under boxes, Monterey calling like siren song. Airport goodbye wrenched, his arms around me. "Love you, Dad." Fierce. Jake's clap on his back. "Make waves, kid." As the gate swallowed him, tears fell free, but joy tempered. Pride in the man he'd become, unapologetic. Fall returned to Ridge Valley for our hunt. Just Jake and me this time, rifles lightened by shared loads. The woods welcomed, familiar yet renewed, and as we tracked a doe through mist, he paused, breath fogging. "Wyatt Harlan," he said, voice gravel soft. "Marry me? For real?" I dropped to knee, not in proposal but acceptance. Ring later but heart now. "Yes," I whispered, and the shot rang true. Not for game but life reclaimed. Years spun. Finn's dives with Orcus, PhD whispers. Our wedding small, cliffsides vows. Jake's girls calling me dad, easy as breath. Haven Point softened. Rainbows in pride parades. Clara's church evolving slow. The sentence from that hunting trip? It didn't change how I saw him. It revealed how I'd always seen. Whole, wild, worthy. And in that seeing, I found my own forever. Wyatt's journal entry, dated 5 years later, under a sketch of 3 generations on a Monterey bluff. Finn with his husband, Cole, a diver with sun-bleached curls and a laugh like breakers. Jake and I, silver threading our hair, hands linked. Lila and Sophie grown, arms around a toddler niece. Red. He said one sentence, and the world cracked open. Not to break, but to let light flood the hidden coves. Compassion isn't pity. It's the fierce grace of witnessing another's depth without flinching. Freedom, choosing to dive in currents be damned. Identity, it's the song beneath the waves, echoing eternal. We sing on. The cabin in Ridge Valley stands yet, dust motes dancing in sun shafts, waiting for hunts that now chase stories, not silence. Haven Point endures, tides ebbing with old hates, flowing new loves. And we, migrants all, find home not in place, but pulse, the beat of hearts unashamed, linked across oceans vast.